If you're anything like me, you absolutely love Game Awards, Summer Game Fest, Opening Night Live, old school E3 energy, anything in regards to a fun tease or an upcoming trailer or a hype announcement, whatever. And clearly Jeff Keighley does as well, because of the last few days he got out on his official Twitter and put a picture out of what even was it, before we knew that it was a statue. Basically, he tweeted 3 words, real inspiring thickness, which led people to check the What 3 Words website, which is a geographical locator website where you can put any 3 words into it, or you can generate them yourself for a specific set of coordinates that would take you to a specific location on this earth. People then used these 3 words from Keighley to zoom in and realize that there was a location in the Mojave Desert, one next to a road called Yucca Mesa Road, Mesa being a reference to Half-Life 3, so immediately that became a whole thing that exploded. But the actual item that was at these coordinates was a over-the-top deluxe statue thing that lights up at night that looks like this. But as I say, the last few days it exploded in regards to people thinking, was it a God of War tease? Because some of the armor that is included on one of the characters that it's embedded into the statue looks like a piece of armor that you can unlock in the newer God of War games. There's also an alligator in there, which looks like one of the reptilian sort of sub-bosses that you fight in the God of War games. Other people, though, pointing to Diablo, and we now have Jez Corden from Windows Central, a very reputable leaker, very reputable journalist, individual in the gaming space, saying that it is actually Diablo 4 related. He does say that it's a little bit more than that. But he was responding to someone on Twitter where he actually retweeted an old post from the beginning of November saying it was time to replay Diablo 4, re-download Diablo 4. He then reposted that himself with an emoji of like the Halo emoji, being like, oh, look, I was right kind of thing, or this means something. Someone then replied and said, oh, is this what the statue is in reference to? And he said yes, but more also. So the thing is, I now think, and this is everyone, Jeff Keighley's got a bit of a reputation in regards to hype and teasers, and there's a meme that always does the rounds this time of year around these award shows of how much Jeff Keighley will hype something out, how much he will hype something up as the next coming of Jesus himself, this unbelievable game. I can't wait to show it off. And then it's some, mid-budget, lower-tier indie title that he's got the exclusive rights to talk about or whatever. I love games of all shapes and sizes, but usually when the level of hype is that big, usually when the verbiage is, oh my god, world premiere, you're not going to believe this thing, people then start to expect all sorts of games ranging from, Bloodborne's re-release to a GTA 6 teaser to the resurrection of Half-Life 3 or whatever the hell it is. And so, it brings about that conversation around Keighley and how he approaches expectations in themselves. And I honestly think with this being a Diablo, reveal, I hope I'm wrong, but I think it'll be Diablo Immortal coming to consoles. Diablo Immortal is the much maligned, largely hated mobile version of Diablo from a good few years back, where, it was revealed on stage. It was part of an entire back and forth between an audience member and members of Blizzard at the time. The whole, do you guys not have phones? You not have a way to play this incredible Diablo experience? Diablo Immortal was completely, chastised and hated online. It's full of microtransactions. It has unbelievably grindy aspects in regards to grinding out different keys for different loot chests. You're not even guaranteed to get specific items once you get to those chests, hence rerunning the same areas over and over and over again. However, Diablo Immortal still made an unbelievable amount of money, over $525 million in its first year. That's $500 million in its first year on sale. It was also reported that the game makes around about $2 million a day for Blizzard / Activision overall. And so, although we don't really talk about Diablo Immortal in like the more mainstream gamer space, we don't really talk about mobile games that much either, I do feel like it's, you're probably going to get something related to Diablo Immortal as an expansion of the Diablo conversation, the idea that Diablo 4 gets DLC, but also Diablo Immortal's coming to consoles. I'm tempering expectations. I am putting expectations rock bottom in the ground so that hopefully we can all just be surprised by this. Because part of me, looking at the different, figures, like I said, that are in the statue, one of them looks like a vampire. One of them looks like he's got fangs, he's got some head ridges going on. Still very Diablo. It's not that it wouldn't be, in place, in context, in Diablo. But I was like, okay, if we're throwing out ridiculous ideas of what this thing might be, let's go Soul Reaver. You know, in gaming, whenever a remaster is released, that is always to temper expectations around whether or not a full installment is worth doing. You know, the Mass Effect Legendary Edition was the remake of the original trilogy, leading into the reveal of the next main Mass Effect installment. It's nearly always the case. And so assumedly, you know, you've got THQ Nordic putting out the remasters of Soul Reaver 1 and 2. You've got Blood Omen 2 and the original Legacy of Kain Blood Omen available on PlayStation Plus. They are seeding that franchise's fans with reminders of how good these games used to be. Legacy of Kain Defiance got added to PlayStation Plus this year as well. So my assumption around the way that you would approach this stuff is to lead into the next major installment. Anyway, point being that if you were eventually going to do the new Soul Reaver, that's what all of this has been building towards. And although I don't fully believe that a THQ Nordic would put this much money into a random statue in the middle of the Mojave Desert, a man can dream! Which is ultimately what brings us back to the statue itself. We've got Jez Corden saying that it is Diablo related, and specifically Diablo 4 related. A lot of the conversation online is like, okay, it's Jeff Keighley, it's the Video Game Awards, his reputation is all over the place. It's probably not going to be, you know, the second coming. It's probably going to be something that's a little bit like, okay, sure. And the most okay, sure announcement is Diablo 4 DLC. But the more thing, that's where, you know, the conversation continues. We know what the main game reveal is, what this is in reference to. The final thing I want to touch on is just an extension of the reputation that I feel Jeff Keighley now has in the modern day. And I obviously, there's always that conversation whenever any live stream is shown from any company where people just spam the chat with GTA 6, Bloodborne, whatever it is. But still, I do want to fire it over to the comments below. Like, do you find that the VGAs, Opening Night Live, Summer Game Fest do right by your expectations, you know, each time when they arrive across the year? Does it feel like Jeff Keighley does have his finger on the pulse overall? Like, he's always the one getting out there asking for feedback, asking people to grade the shows, like A, B, C, D. Like, what would you give me in feedback? And obviously, you know, we're online, we're dealing with a whole bunch of people replying, so I feel like it tends to skew a little bit more negative. But I am curious what people think, because I quite appreciate the idea of someone, you know, at least trying to bring this many reveals, this many gaming stories, this many gaming celebrities all into one place, under the, you know, guise of let's celebrate the industry. Let's just, you know, let's have fun with these big reveals, these world premieres, that kind of thing. However, it's very easy to class something as a world premiere when, you know, anything can be a world premiere if it's the first time you're showing it off. There is an expectation in a wider sense of something on the AAA level, some sort of sought after game release, something that a lot of us have talked about for a good few years and we're waiting for more information on a given project. And I feel like that's where he routinely drops the ball, and I feel like it's his blind spot. Whenever there's anything doing the rounds, like right now as I opened the video mentioning Half-Life 3 is the thing that just keeps getting mentioned. Loads of insiders saying that it's going to get an announcement before the end of 2025. And whether or not Jeff Keighley has anything, you know, whether he has that secured or whatever, whether that Yucca Mesa Road is the thing that is actually teasing Half-Life 3, we will have to wait and see. But I remember when that abandoned game was being talked about, you know, like sort of 2-3 years ago. Hassan Karaman worked for this studio called Black Box Games. They were putting out this game that everybody thought was a collaboration between Hideo Kojima and Hassan Karaman, this sort of unnamed studio. And it was going to be the next, you know, it was going to be the evolution of PT. It was going to be the next Silent Hill game. And over time, you know, Jeff Keighley weighed in, said that Karaman had DM'd him and asked him for help with revealing the game. And he said he was excited to see what was coming. He did say during that response that he, you know, didn't know a whole lot about the game, but he was excited about what he could find out going forward. And so that then got him in the maelstrom of, oh, this dude knows something and what's going to happen, and tune into the Game Awards. Same thing back in 2017, 2018. The conversations are on the Bloodborne remaster. You know, it's you can argue it's good business because he does get people to watch the shows, and the viewership for the VGAs has only gone up year on year. But again, it brings it back to that conversation around him as a host, as the individual is curating 3 shows worth of gameplay reveals and sponsorship opportunities and different celebrity appearances and different bits, you know, the talent that actually makes the game showing up as well. You know, there's a lot of cringe around the VGAs. I love E3 cringe and old school video game showmanship cringe. I think it's just a fun part of the industry. But like I say, I pass it over to you in the comments. What do you think of Jeff Keighley's agency across the gaming industry? The fact that he is in control of all 3 major showcase reveals across the year. And what do you think of this particular statue? The fact that it's Diablo 4 related. Can it be anything more than that? What could you possibly tag on to a Diablo 4 conversation that would be as mind-blowing as what this appears to look like? That's over to you.